What if I told you that feeling like you don't quite fit in isn't a flaw, it's actually a sign of psychological rarity? That the very traits that make you feel different, misunderstood, or too much are actually markers of what Carl Jung called the most evolved form of human consciousness. Today we're exploring the 6 definitive signs that you possess the rarest psychological type on Earth, according to Jungian psychology. And I need to warn you, if you recognize yourself in these signs, your life might suddenly make a lot more sense, but it also means you're carrying a burden that most people will never understand. Jung spent his entire career studying human consciousness, and he noticed something remarkable. Most people operate from what he called undifferentiated consciousness. They're shaped entirely by their culture, their family conditioning, their societal roles. They never question the programs they're running. They never develop a truly individual perspective. They live their entire lives as copies of copies, never becoming original. But there's a small percentage of people who are fundamentally different. Jung called these individuals differentiated or individuated, and he believed they represented the evolutionary edge of human consciousness. These are people who have done the deep psychological work of separating their true self from all the conditioning, who have integrated their shadow, who have developed what Jung called a transcendent function that allows them to hold paradox and complexity. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're one of these rare individuals, and the first sign is something you've probably felt your entire life: a profound sense of not belonging. Not just feeling different, but feeling like you're operating on a completely different wavelength from most people around you. This isn't about thinking you're better than others. It's about recognizing that you process reality differently. You see layers and meanings that others miss. You ask questions that make people uncomfortable. You can't accept surface-level answers or go through the motions of conventional life without feeling like you're dying inside. Jung would say this sense of alienation isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a signpost indicating that you're meant for the individuation journey. You can't fit in because fitting in would require betraying your psychological complexity. You were never meant to be normal. You were meant to be conscious. For women especially, this creates tremendous suffering because we're socialized to prioritize connection and belonging above all else. When you're a psychologically rare woman, you're constantly choosing between authenticity and acceptance. You can pretend to be simpler than you are and maintain social harmony, or you can be yourself and risk isolation. Most rare individuals spend their early years trying the first option before finally accepting the second. The second sign of psychological rarity is what Jung called symbolic thinking. This is the ability to see beyond literal, concrete reality into the symbolic and archetypal dimensions of experience. You naturally think in metaphors, patterns, and meanings. You see synchronicities everywhere, meaningful coincidences that reveal deeper order beneath surface chaos. Most people live entirely in the literal world. A dream is just random neurons firing. A chance encounter is just coincidence. A repeating pattern in their relationships is just bad luck. But if you're psychologically rare, you instinctively know that everything means something, that reality is constantly speaking in symbols, that nothing is truly random. If you're recognizing yourself in these signs and want to explore Jungian psychology more deeply, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We dive into these concepts regularly with practical applications for your real life. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future content. The third sign is an unusually active inner world. Jung distinguished between people who are primarily oriented to the external world and those oriented to the internal world. But the psychologically rare individual doesn't just prefer their inner world. They have an extraordinarily rich, complex, and autonomous inner life. Your inner world isn't just thoughts and feelings. It's populated with what Jung called autonomous complexes, inner figures, archetypal energies, and a constant dialogue between different parts of your psyche. You might experience this as having multiple perspectives on every issue, hearing different voices offering different wisdom, or feeling like you contain multitudes rather than a single, simple self. Most people have relatively quiet minds, They think about practical matters, react to external stimuli, and don't spend much time in introspection. But if you're psychologically rare, your inner world is louder, busier, and more demanding than the outer world. You can spend hours lost in thought, exploring ideas, having internal conversations, processing experiences on multiple levels simultaneously. This inner richness is both a gift and a burden. The gift is depth, insight, creativity, and the ability to understand human nature at profound levels. The burden is that you can never turn it off. You can't just not think about it or let it go the way other people seem to do effortlessly. Your psyche demands constant attention and engagement. For women with this trait, the burden is compounded by social expectations to be present, attentive, and focused on others. When you're naturally oriented inward, being constantly pulled outward by social and relational demands is exhausting. You need significant alone time, not because you're antisocial, but because your inner world requires tending. The fourth sign of psychological rarity is what Jung called the integration of opposites. Most people split reality into dualistic categories: good and bad, right and wrong, masculine and feminine, spiritual and material. They identify with one side and reject the other. This creates what Jung called a one-sided personality, psychologically incomplete and prone to projection and shadow possession. But the rare individual develops what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox, to see truth in opposing perspectives, to integrate rather than split. You can be both strong and vulnerable, both logical and emotional, both independent and connected, both serious and playful. You don't have to choose one pole and reject its opposite. This makes you confusing to others. People want you to be consistent, predictable, easily categorized. They're uncomfortable when you express seemingly contradictory qualities. They might accuse you of being inconsistent or fake, when really you're just psychologically complex and refusing to reduce yourself to a simple persona. Jung believed this integration of opposites was the hallmark of advanced consciousness. It's what he meant by individuation, becoming whole rather than one-sided. But achieving this requires tremendous psychological work. You have to consciously integrate your shadow, develop your inferior functions, and resist the social pressure to present a simple, consistent self. The fifth sign is heightened sensitivity to energy and emotional atmospheres. Jung wrote about what he called participation mystique, a state of psychological fusion where boundaries between self and other become permeable. While Jung generally saw this as a primitive state that needed to be outgrown, he also recognized that highly developed individuals often had this capacity in a more conscious form. If you're psychologically rare, you're probably an empath in the truest sense. You don't just notice others' emotions, you absorb them, feel them in your own body, can't distinguish where you end and others begin. You walk into a room and immediately feel the emotional atmosphere. You know when something's wrong before anyone says a word. You pick up on undercurrents, tensions, and unexpressed feelings that others completely miss. This sensitivity extends beyond people to places, objects, and situations. You might feel uncomfortable in certain environments for reasons you can't articulate. You might feel drawn to or repelled by people based on their energy rather than any logical assessment. You might need to carefully manage your exposure to news, violence, or suffering because you absorb it so deeply. Jung would say this sensitivity is both a primitive and an advanced trait. It's primitive in that it reflects incomplete ego boundaries, but it's advanced when it's conscious and managed. The psychologically rare individual learns to use their sensitivity as information without being overwhelmed by it. They develop strong boundaries while maintaining openness. For women, this sensitivity is often dismissed as being too emotional or too sensitive, which is tragic because it's actually a profound gift. Your sensitivity gives you access to dimensions of reality that most people can't perceive. The sixth and perhaps most defining sign of psychological rarity is what Jung called the individuation drive, an inner compulsion toward wholeness, authenticity, and self-realization that cannot be satisfied by external achievements or conventional success. This isn't just ambition or the desire for self-improvement. It's a deep, soul-level imperative to become fully yourself, regardless of the cost. Most people are content to follow the collective program, get educated, build a career, form relationships, accumulate possessions, achieve status, and live comfortably within societal norms. But if you have the individuation drive, none of this satisfies you. You can achieve everything society says should make you happy and still feel empty because you're not living authentically. Jung believed this drive was innate in everyone, but only activated in a small percentage. For most people, it remains dormant their entire lives. They never question their conditioning, never examine their beliefs, never do the painful work of differentiating their true self from their persona. But for the psychologically rare, the individuation drive won't be denied. This drive often intensifies during what Jung called the second half of life, typically starting in the late 30s or 40s. This is when many women experience what's labeled a midlife crisis, but is actually the individuation drive demanding attention. You can no longer tolerate living inauthentically. You can no longer perform roles that don't align with your true self. You can no longer sacrifice your psychological development for others' comfort. The individuation drive forces you to question everything: your career, your relationships, your beliefs, your identity. It asks uncomfortable questions like, who am I beneath all my roles? What do I genuinely value versus what I was taught to value? What parts of myself have I sacrificed or suppressed? What does my soul actually want? For women especially, following the individuation drive often means disappointing people. It means setting boundaries with family who expect unlimited access to you. It means pursuing interests or paths that others don't understand or approve of. It means potentially leaving relationships or situations that aren't serving your growth, even when staying would be easier. Jung was clear that individuation isn't optional for those who have this drive. You can try to ignore it, suppress it, or distract yourself from it, but it will keep emerging, often through symptoms like depression, anxiety, restlessness, or a pervasive sense of meaninglessness. Your psyche is demanding that you become who you truly are, and it won't stop until you listen. Now let's talk about the stages that psychologically rare individuals typically move through. Jung didn't describe these as linear stages, but we can identify common patterns in the individuation journey. Understanding where you are in this process can help you navigate it more consciously. The first stage is what I call the outsider phase. This usually begins in childhood or adolescence. You recognize that you're different from others, but you don't yet understand why or what it means. You feel like an alien observing human behavior from the outside. You might try desperately to fit in, to be normal, to suppress your differences. Or you might embrace being the rebel, the weird one, the black sheep. During this phase, your difference feels like a curse. You just want to belong, to feel understood, to find your people. But no matter how hard you try, something always feels off. You're playing a role that doesn't quite fit. You're translating yourself into simpler terms so others can understand you. You're exhausted from pretending to be less complex than you are. For many women, this phase is particularly painful because female socialization emphasizes conformity, harmony, and relational connection. Being the outsider as a woman often means being labeled as difficult, intense, too much, or too deep. You learn to hide your depth to avoid making others uncomfortable. The second stage is the awakening phase. This typically happens when you encounter Jungian psychology or similar frameworks that validate your experience and give you language for what you've always felt. Suddenly, you realize, I'm not broken, I'm not crazy, I'm psychologically rare, and this is actually a gift, not a curse. This stage is both liberating and destabilizing. It's liberating because you finally understand yourself and stop trying to force yourself into molds that don't fit. But it's destabilizing because you realize how much of your life has been built on false premises. How many choices you made trying to be normal. How much of yourself you've suppressed or denied. You also begin to recognize other rare individuals. Jung talked about how individuated people recognize each other. There's an immediate sense of resonance, of being seen and understood at depth. These connections are precious because they're so rare. Most of your life, you felt misunderstood. Now you're finding people who speak your language, who don't need you to translate yourself, who match your depth and complexity. The awakening phase is where many people get stuck because the work is difficult and the losses can be significant. As you become more authentic, relationships that were based on your false self often fall away. People who benefited from your people-pleasing or your suppression of certain qualities may react negatively to your changes. You might lose friends, experience family conflict, or even end romantic relationships that can't accommodate your evolving self. For women, this phase often involves reclaiming aspects of yourself that were deemed unfeminine or unacceptable. Anger, ambition, sexual agency, independence, the capacity to disappoint others. You're integrating your shadow, which for women often means embracing the qualities we were taught to reject. The third stage is what Jung called individuation proper, becoming a fully differentiated, psychologically whole individual. This doesn't mean you're perfect or finished. Individuation is a lifelong process. But it means you've achieved a stable sense of authentic self that isn't dependent on external validation or shaped primarily by conditioning. In this stage, you're comfortable with your complexity and contradictions. You don't need others to understand you, though you appreciate it when they do. You've developed strong psychological boundaries while maintaining the capacity for genuine intimacy. You know your values, your limits, your gifts, and your shadows. You can navigate the world authentically while still being functional and effective. Jung said that individuated people often feel a sense of calling or purpose that goes beyond personal satisfaction. You recognize that your psychological development isn't just for yourself. It serves something larger. You might feel called to create, teach, heal, or contribute in ways that help others access their own depth and authenticity. For women who reach this stage, there's often a profound shift from seeking validation to offering guidance. You become what Jung called the wise woman archetype, someone who has done the inner work and can now serve as a guide for others on their journey. This doesn't mean you're done growing, but you have integrated enough of yourself to be genuinely useful to others. Now, let's address Jung's warnings about the challenges that come with being psychologically rare. He was clear that this path isn't easier than conventional life. In many ways, it's harder. The first major challenge is shadow work. Jung insisted that individuation requires confronting and integrating your shadow, all the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or repressed. For most people, the shadow remains unconscious and gets projected onto others. But if you're committed to individuation, you have to do the painful work of recognizing your shadow and owning it. This means acknowledging your capacity for selfishness, cruelty, manipulation, jealousy, and all the other qualities you'd rather not admit you possess. Shadow work is particularly challenging for women because we're socialized to be good, nice, nurturing, and selfless. Our shadow often contains legitimate anger, healthy selfishness, competitive drives, and sexual desires that we've learned to suppress. Integrating these qualities without swinging to the opposite extreme of being controlled by them requires tremendous psychological skill. Jung also warned about the danger of inflation, identifying with the self rather than the ego and believing you're more evolved or special than you actually are. This is a particular trap for psychologically rare individuals who might use their rarity as a form of spiritual superiority. True individuation actually includes humility and the recognition that you're still very much human with all the flaws that entails. Another challenge Jung emphasized is energy management. Psychologically rare individuals often experience what he called energy drain because you're processing reality on so many more levels than most people. You're not just dealing with surface interactions. You're perceiving symbolic meanings, archetypal patterns, emotional undercurrents, and synchronistic connections. This constant deep processing is exhausting. You also expend enormous energy translating yourself for others, managing your sensitivity, and containing your complexity in spaces that can't hold it. Jung recognized that rare individuals need significant solitude and downtime, not because they're antisocial, but because they need to recover from the constant overstimulation of being psychologically awake in a largely unconscious world. For women, this energy drain is compounded by social and relational expectations. We're expected to be emotionally available, socially engaged, and relationship-focused. When you need substantial alone time to manage your psychological complexity, you're often labeled as cold, selfish, or avoidant. Learning to honor your energy needs without guilt is a crucial part of maintaining your psychological health. Jung also warned about the isolation that comes with psychological rarity. The more individuated you become, the fewer people can truly understand you or meet you at your depth. This isn't about superiority. It's simply a mathematical reality. If you're part of a small percentage of the population operating at differentiated consciousness, you're going to feel lonely sometimes. The key is finding quality over quantity in relationships. Jung believed that individuated people need fewer relationships, but those relationships need to be with people who can match their depth and authenticity. One genuine soul connection is worth 100 superficial friendships. Learning to be comfortable with smaller social circles and longer periods of solitude becomes essential. Now let's talk about why Jung believed psychologically rare individuals are crucial for human evolution. He didn't see individuation as self-indulgent navel-gazing. He believed that the small percentage of people who do this deep psychological work are actually shaping the future of human consciousness. Jung argued that consciousness evolution happens through individuals, not through the collective. The collective is conservative, resistant to change, committed to maintaining existing structures. But individuals who break from collective conditioning and achieve genuine psychological differentiation create new possibilities for what it means to be human. Every time someone individuates, they expand the range of what's possible. They model a different way of being. They create art, ideas, and contributions that emerge from authentic depth rather than collective programming. They raise consciousness not by preaching, but by embodying a more evolved form of awareness. For women who individuate, this is particularly significant because you're breaking centuries of conditioning about what women should be, how women should think, and what women should prioritize. Every woman who refuses to sacrifice her depth for social acceptance, who integrates her shadow rather than remaining one-sidedly nice, who follows her individuation drive despite pressure to conform, you're expanding possibilities for all women. If you're finding this understanding of psychological rarity transformative, please subscribe to this channel. We regularly explore how to apply Jungian concepts to navigate life as a psychologically complex woman. Don't miss future videos that support your individuation journey. Jung also believed that rare individuals serve as what he called psychopumps, guides for others who are ready to begin their own journey. You don't have to actively teach or counsel people. Simply living authentically, refusing to compromise your depth, and demonstrating that it's possible to be psychologically whole in an unconscious world. This serves as an invitation to others who are ready. Your very existence challenges the collective assumption that surface-level living is sufficient. When others encounter you, they sense something different, something more real. Some will be threatened by this and reject you, but others will be awakened by it and begin questioning their own conditioning. You become a catalyst simply by being fully yourself. So what should you do if you recognize yourself in these 6 signs? First, stop trying to be normal. Stop apologizing for your depth, your sensitivity, your complexity, or your need for meaning. These aren't flaws. They're indicators of psychological rarity and the individuation drive. Second, commit to the work. Individuation isn't passive. It requires active engagement with your psyche. This might mean therapy, particularly with a Jungian analyst. It definitely means regular self-reflection, shadow work, dream analysis, and honest examination of your patterns and projections. Third, protect your energy fiercely. You cannot afford to scatter yourself across superficial relationships and activities. You need time alone, time in nature, time for creative expression, time to tend your inner world. This isn't selfish. It's essential maintenance for rare psychological types. Fourth, find your people. You need at least a few relationships with others who operate at similar depth. These might be rare, but they're worth seeking. Online communities, Jungian study groups, depth psychology courses, these spaces attract rare individuals. You're not alone, even though you're uncommon. Fifth, embrace your role in consciousness evolution. Your individuation isn't just personal, it's contributing to the expansion of human awareness. When you feel discouraged by the difficulty of this path, remember that you're doing work that matters beyond your individual life. Finally, be patient with yourself. Jung said individuation is the work of a lifetime. You don't have to be perfect or fully individuated. You just have to keep choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, authenticity over performance, depth over surface comfort. Every choice in that direction matters. Being psychologically rare isn't easy, but it's meaningful in ways that conventional success can never be. You were given this complexity, this sensitivity, this depth for a reason. Trust the journey, do the work, and know that you're exactly who you're meant to be.